good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here. And today I'm answering a question that was asked on stream last week. And that question was, what is the best Battleship line for a new player to start off in? And well, honestly, the only one that can answer that question is, well, you. If you're that new player, then, I can sit here and tell you what I think you should start off in, but honestly, you should pick something that is interesting to you. I can tell you to start off in the Soviet battleships because they're the strongest and the most survivable right now. I could tell you to start off with the German battleships because, in my opinion, they're the funnest. I can tell you anything, but it's a better call for you to make your own decision rather than just follow whatever somebody says blindly without doing your own research. So today, I'm just going to go through each of the lines, summarize them, go over some generalities about them. I can't really get too in-depth on them because honestly I could talk about each line for probably about 2 hours if I really wanted to get down to every single detail in the ship, and well, there's quite a few battleship lines now and I don't feel like making a 10-hour video, so we're just going to go through each line, talk about their characteristics, their strengths, their weaknesses, and maybe mention a gem or two in the line. And gems, by the way, are like the shining jewel of that tech line, and these are of course all tech lines. None of these are premiums. We aren't going to even mention premiums in this video very much. I might bring one up here or there, but this isn't a premium ship video, this is a tech line ship video. So I'm going to go through these lines in the order that I grinded them out. So throw back to 2016 when I first started playing the game with the US Battleship Line. So the US Battleship Line today, they are kind of all-around battleships, jack of all trades, masters of none. They're decent in just about every category you can think of. Survivability, they're pretty decent, especially after they got that improved heel. Artillery, they're pretty decent too. The AA department, they used to be gods of AA, but now they're just decent. If you build into it, they're better than average, but again, with AA and the way it is now, it's just, So the way the line goes is from Tier 3 to Tier 7, they're slow, tanky, mid-range battleships with normally large for their tier guns from Tier 3 to Tier 7. For the most part, like the Colorado at Tier 7 has 16-inch guns. The New Mexico has 12 14-inch guns at Tier 6, so pretty nice firepower there, so forth and so on as we go down the line. But then from Tier 8 to Tier 10, you get the quote-unquote fast battleships, where you get the North Carolina, you're finally unlocked to go with your maximum speed of 28 knots, while most of the other battleship lines have been going 32 knots since about Tier 7, but who's keeping count there? And then 16-inch guns with decent accuracy from Tier 8 on up, and you get to the Iowa, which is the fastest battleship in the American tech tree. Used to be the fastest battleship in game. Then you get the Montana at Tier 10, which isn't a speed demon by any stretch of the imaginations, but still, it has decent speed for its size. And of course, speaking of the Montana is one of the two oldest battleships in the game. Used to be the Montana and Yami back in the day duking it out. But since then, we've obviously gained many a battleship. And it definitely does show on her model and stuff. And if you know what to look at, and like certain details that are included on newer ships, they're just not there in Montana. But anyway, despite her being an old girl, she has received plenty of buffs and updates to where she's still definitely fine. She works just fine if you have decent aim, especially with that Artillery Plotting Room Mod 2. I believe that's what the module is called. It's the special module that the American battleships can get. It decreases their dispersion by another 10%. And on Montana, which has 12 16-inch guns with the American AP shells, that's quite a punch at Tier 10, and she used to have the heaviest broadside in the game until recently. On top of that, the U.S. battleships, all of them gets the improved U.S. Damage Con, which runs for 25 seconds, which is absolutely friggin' fantastic. Other battleship lines, their DCP party normally only runs for about 10 or 15 seconds, if that. And then you have the Soviets that are at a flat 10 as well. But anyway, yeah, that U.S. Damage Con is very, very nice. And like I mentioned earlier, the American battleships get an improved heal from Tier 8 Plus. It's not a dry dock heal like the British battleships, but it is definitely a very welcomed improvement over the old U.S. battleship heal that the Missouri, the Tier 9 premium American battleship, gets still, and that's definitely a big letdown now, because again, with all the HE spam and carriers and such, that improved damage con, that improved heal, is a big plus for the American battleships from Tier 8 up. And this is the one that I would say most new players should start at, because again, it's a good all-around class. You will learn a lot playing this class. I do have a whole guide up on this line if you want to go check that out. But out of all the lines, this is where I would say to start. But again, I'm not saying you have to listen to that. Just if you asked me and I had to give you an answer, this is where I would say you start at. But we have recently received another American battleship line, the Chonkers. So, starting from Tier 8, you can now choose to go down the super thick line, as I like to call them. It's basically if the American Navy decided to keep with the super dreadnought design and not transition over to quote-unquote fast battleships. Basically bigger Colorados. From Tier 8, we got the Kansas, which is basically a Colorado with 12 16-inch guns, and then you get to the Minnesota, which is a bigger Colorado with 12 16-inch guns, and then you get to the Vermont, which is an even bigger Colorado with 12 18-inch guns. But they're the 457 millimeter guns. They are not the 460s, so you cannot overmatch 32 millimeters of armor. And these are basically, if you really enjoy sniping, this is the split to follow. If you don't like the mid-range, kind of running circles at mid to close-ish range that the NorCal, Iowa, and Montana are normally good at, if you like backline sniping, this is the line to go with. Now, the downsides of this line is that they are, of course, ungodly slow. You're stuck at a 23 knot top speed from Tier 8 to Tier 10, which is terrible in my opinion. Again, they're massive targets too, so even though you're sitting at the back of the map, any battleship with good aim can hit you in some way. So there is that downside, but the Vermont absolutely slaps with those 12 18-inch guns. And this is, of course, the ship that dethroned the Montana for heaviest broadside at Tier 10. Alright, moving on down now to the Imperial Japanese Navy. So the way the IJN works is that throughout the line, it's a mix of mid to long range snipers from Tier 3 to Tier 10. It's also a very interesting mix of battleships and battle cruisers throughout the line. And these ships, since they are mostly battle cruisers or fast battleships, they're generally fast for their tier from Tier 3 to Tier 8. For example, the Congo at Tier 5, 32 knot top speed. At Tier 5 on a battleship that still has 10 guns, so oh boy, that's pretty, I'm sorry, not tier guns, 10 guns, 8 guns, so yeah, that's pretty speedy down there at Tier 5. But as you're going through the line, some of these battleships are squishier than others, because some of them are actually battle cruisers, some of them are actually battleships, so it's kind of just, you get what you get as you go through. And generally they have the biggest guns at their tier with a high number of guns, so accuracy through volume until you get to Tier 9. Most of the Imperial Japanese battleships, until you get to Tier 9, their accuracy isn't really there, but again, because you have lots of guns for your tier, accuracy through volume. Throw enough stuff at the wall and it will stick. When you get to Tier 9, you transition to super dreadnoughts from the battleships and battle cruisers with the Izumo, and surprisingly, Izumo's actually decent now. If you'll watch some older Warships content from way back in the day, you will hear people ragging on Izumo, and it was rightly deserved back then. Izumo was hot garbage back in the day, but it's received a lot of buffs, so it's actually a pretty decent battleship now. And then from the Izumo, you of course get to the Yamato, which has 18.1-inch guns, which allows you to just giggle at 32mm bows and overmatch them. Used to have the biggest guns in the game, then Shikishima came in with her sound effect and dethroned the Yami. But the Yami, in my opinion, is the ultimate tech line sniper. You get 9 18.1-inch guns, which means you can just dunk on ships from range, and with the proper build, you can get a 26-second reload time on those 18.1-inch guns. And with the spotter plane consumable, it's a great sniper, and again, in my opinion, the best tech line sniper in the game. So if you want a good sniping line, this is, in my opinion, is much better than the American Battleship Split. Plus, you get the Yami, and the Yami actually existed, so that's something that's pretty cool too. And then also, that's a pretty unique thing for the IJN line, is that most of their battleships actually existed at one point in time, unlike most other lines. Alright, moving on next to the German battleships, my personal favorite class. Well, for personal favorite tech line at least. So, my personal favorite tech line. So the German battleships are all about brawling, and I do have a full guide for the Imperial Japanese battleships and the German battleships as well, if you want to look that up and see a bit more of this in detail. So, German battleships all about brawling. They've got that great turtleback armor, which means their citadel is protected from, well, it's not exposed. It basically has a ton of armor in between it and other ships, and it's also slanted. So at close range, this armor is great. You won't eat citadels. You will eat a bit of pin damage, but you won't get absolutely deleted at close range unless, again, you're showing like full broadside to like a Vermont, and you just get incinerated by the sheer amount of shells being thrown at you, but you won't get deleted via citadel hits at close range. Now, at long range, the armor, just because of the way it's designed, is terrible. If you play a German battleship and it's the opening minutes of a match and you're out like 24 kilometers, you will get shot at, and if you don't maneuver, you will eat big hits at long range. So make sure you keep an eye out for that. And the way the German battleships mostly go is that they have smaller/low amounts of guns for their tier, but they normally have decent reload times, somewhere around 25 seconds. Accuracy may vary because of that as well, like with the Bismarck. If you've ever seen Bismarck gameplay footage, even today after the German battleship buffs, its accuracy is still all over the place. And currently they do have the best secondaries in the game. We will see how this changes with the Commander rework. They're making some major changes to the secondary skills. I don't have time to get into that in this video, but I've made several videos on that topic. But right now, you have long range at tier 10 with the curve first. You can get those secondaries out to 11.6 kilometers. And most of the secondary guns can pin the major thresholds at that tier. Most of them. There's a couple of exemptions here and there. So you don't really need IFHE, and that's because of the German HE pin ratios. You only have to divide by 4, not by 6, like you have to with normal HE, which I should probably explain how that works. You take the gun caliber, divide by 6. That's the threshold of armor you can pin with that HE. But with the German HE, you divide by 4, which means smaller guns on the Germans can pin more than their same caliber on other tech lines. So you don't have to take IFHE because, again, you can pin most of the major thresholds at your tier most of the time. Couple that with a great reload time and a good chance of fire per shell, you have great secondaries there, and that's why I say don't take IFHE, because yeah, sure, you might be able to pin a little bit more with those secondaries, but you won't be able to set as much fires as you were before. And again, have a whole video on that if you want to check that out too. And secondaries are, of course, amazing if you build into them with BFT, AFT, manual fire for secondaries, and all the secondary modules. Plus, Gneisenau gets torpedoes at Tier 7, the only tech-line battleship to get torpedoes, which that's fun to mess around with. Plus, the Gneisenau is all around a very great battleship, too. Had a blast playing through it when I was grinding through the Germans. And the German battleships are fast for their tier all the way through from the Tier 3 to the curve first. They are all in the, not, top of their class for speed, but they're all up there for speed. They also get hydroacoustic search, which is great for avoiding torpedoes, since Germans apparently forgot to include torpedo protection on their battleships. They have some of the worst torpedo protection for their tier, and all higher tier German BBs get this hydroacoustic search consumable. Now, the big downside is that, of course, right now they are kind of out of the meta, because everything right now is going more into a long-range engagement, especially at higher tiers. So the Germans are just kind of barely hanging in there right now. Curve First is only really hanging in because at higher tiers she does have 20-kilometer range, which is short, but she does have 12 guns, and again, if you throw enough stuff at the wall, it will stick. So if you manage to survive in something like GK until later in the match, you can push in, then you can really get in it. But again, they're like hanging on by like a thread right now, so that is the downside to them. And again, the commander rework may axe them off altogether. Wargaming said they won't let that happen, but we will see how that goes. Okay, going on down now to the British battleships. So sniper HE spam. That's basically what the British battleships are. British battleship HE is absolutely nutty. You get great fire chance on top of just, I don't know if there's some hidden like ripping ability to HE, but if there is, the value on the British battleship HE must be set to like frickin' 15, because one salvo from Conqueror has literally destroyed all of my AA before when I was playing Iowa. Like, just one salvo from Conqueror, I was bowing to him, he hit me, all my AA was gone in one salvo. It's somewhere on my channel. There's like 1,000 something videos uploaded to my channel. I'm sure if you go dig back long enough to like right when Conqueror got released, that happened. And you don't really need to see that clip because it still happens to this day. 1 or 2 salvos from Conqueror or Lion or any of the British BBs can just wreck your AA suite. So on top of that, they also get a dry dock kill from tier 9 up, where you can literally reprint about 70% of your ship's HP with one heal. That's friggin' nuts. And they recently, well, not recently anymore, but they did change it to where it has a quicker cooldown time. When it came out, it had the cooldown time that it has now. Then they increased it, then they decreased it some time ago. So they do have that going for them. That's to compensate them for their low HP for their tier, along with their lackluster armor at their tier. It didn't used to be like that. Conqueror used to have an underwater citadel, but her citadel's nice and high now, to where you can get blamped in it, but again, you get that dry dock kill. They're also pretty stealthy too. You can get their concealment down to the higher tier ships, at least down to about 12.7, 12.6 kilometers, and the lower tier ones do also have a nice low detection range as well. They also have pretty decent AA. They're in the same boat as the Americans. They used to have really good AA before the CV rework, but now they just have decent AA. And they also have a decent amount of guns for their tier, along with lower reload times for their tier. Like Monarch has a 25-second reload time on her guns, for example, at tier 8. They also get British battleship AP, which is short fuse AP, which is great for smacking the crap out of cruisers, because the shell will explode much sooner than a normal battleship shell. So against cruisers, that's great. Against battleships, you'll still chunk them pretty well, but you'll get a lot less citadels because they're not penetrating all the way through the armor. They're exploding at a much shorter distance. Alright, moving on now to the Soviet battleships. So the Soviet battleships, they get strong armor from their front at least. They have amazing bow armor all the way through the line. They're pretty much dreadnoughts from tier 3 up to tier 7. From tier 8, 9, and 10, they're still pretty dreadnought to E. They're not exactly fast battleships, but they are definitely more of a modern design. The tier 9, the Soyuz, kind of throws it back to that dreadnought era design as far as like aesthetics go. But it's definitely a more modern design for sure. But anyway, they are absolute tanks. They are by far the most survivable battleships in the game right now. They get that Soviet damage con, which means they have a limited number of damage cons, but they reload incredibly fast, but they're only active for short amounts of times, like I mentioned earlier. They do also get one less heal than other battleships, but that's because their armor is so darn good, especially from the front, if you know the angle. Like, literally, you can play the Kremlin, the Moskva, the Stalingrad, the Petro, the Soyuz, all of them, and the rest of the line too, exactly the same. Just point your pointy in toward the enemy team, sit there, tank. That's all you gotta do. On top of that too, they do also have higher health for their tiers, like the Kremlin dethroned the Kurfürst for having the largest health pool in the game. And they are slow, but again, they're massive ships with great armor. And they do get the Soviet BB gimmick, which is the closer they are to the target, the better their dispersion. So you are encouraged to move in and tank for your team. The sweet zone for most of the battleships, again, it depends on the tier, but from like tier 7 on up, the sweet zone is somewhere around 12, 13-ish kilometers. So you are encouraged to move in to really make your guns very effective. Kremlin back in the day, the gimmick wasn't very apparent, and you could dunk on ships from about 20 kilometers away, but she's been hit with a nerf bat several times now, to where you really do have to be within like 12, 13 kilometers to have good, effective guns. They also have pretty decent AA. Kremlin, again, used to have very, very, very good AA, but that got nerfed into the dirt too, to where now if you sneeze on Kremlin with any amount of HE, she loses most of her AA in one run. And they also get the Soviet gun velocities, to where the battleships just have absolutely amazing pen. As far as gun caliber goes, they go pretty par for the course with not gun caliber, gun amount. They go pretty par for the course with their tier, like Soyuz has 9, Sinop has 9 guns, so they're pretty much right along with what you would expect at that tier. Lower tiers, you have mini guns on your ship, but I mean, just about every lower tier battleship tech tree has some ship that's just bristling with guns at some point in time. But anyway, yeah, the guns are great. They hit really hard if you can get in close with them, especially against more armored targets like American battleships in general. And the Kremlin does get 457mm guns with that Soviet gun velocity, which means you can slap the crap out of most heavily armored ships with your guns. Alright, finally we come up to the French. So the French battleships, I didn't grind these last. I actually grinded these before the Soviet battleships because they came out first. Don't know why they're last on my little script here. I guess I'm just that tired. So Frenchies, they get the French baguette armor. And by that, I mean sometimes you'll be perfectly broadside and just bounce everything like you're made out of just bias. Sometimes you'll be perfectly angled and need a random citadel, and yeah, that's fine. Okay. They also get the speed boost as their gimmick, so you can pop that speed boost and have improved acceleration, deceleration, and do become the fastest battleship at your tier with that speed boost applied. Again, talking out of the tech line ships. I know someone's typing Georgia in the comment section. Just hold your horses. And that is very useful when you're dodging torpedoes. You need to get out of a situation that comes in use quite a bit. Now, the only thing consistent with the French battleship design is the quad turrets, because if you look at the ships, it's kind of like, okay, I see what you're doing there, around with the Normandy and so. Oh, now we get the Richelieu. Okay, okay, we have the Alsace now. You just put a turret on the end of the Richelieu. Okay, and you get to Republic and you're just like, what is this? What did the Alsace and the Graf Spiegel do while nobody was looking? Like, what? Why? it's so weird that we kind of have a consistency with the lower tiers and getting into mid and high tiers, and even then, like, the ship designs then don't necessarily, like, how did they go from this to this? Some people say they see it. I kind of don't. But then, like, Republic. Okay. Anyway, Alsace is by far the best thing in the French battleship line. I wouldn't blame you if you stopped there with its 12, 15-inch guns. But Republic is, of course, the tier 10 that we got. So as far as the ships go, they get French battleship gun velocities, which, like the Soviets, is pretty darn good. So you get great pins on these guns, even though they are usually smaller caliber guns for their tier, like the Leon with its 16 guns, but they're all, I think they're 12 or 13-inch guns there. But yeah, typically smaller guns for their tier. Then again, you get to the Alsace and you get like 17, I think it's like 17.5-inch guns. But okay, we'll get to more on that in a second. Other than that, the secondaries on the ships, the Alsace and Republic actually have pretty decent secondaries, but they're really not worth building into, except maybe on the Alsace, maybe just for like DD repellent, because if a DD does crop up next to you in the Alsace and you've got the secondaries spec'd, they're going to regret that decision very fast. Not really great for doing damage against heavily armored cruisers or battleships outside of fires. They do have a pretty decent fire rate. She does have quite a bit of them too, but they lack the pins of the German secondaries. They don't have the accuracy of the secondary American battleships, like the premium ships like the Massachusetts, Georgia, and Ohio and such. So they're kind of middle of the road. On Alsace, I would say they're worth speccing into, maybe. But on the Republic, definitely not. It's best just to go with the main battery build. I do have a secondary build on Republic because I haven't changed it yet because I don't play the ship a lot. Because I don't particularly like it all that much. Because Republic, you get 2 turrets with 4 guns per turret. And they're 17.5-inch guns. And they have a 20-second reload time after you build into it. But they're also not that accurate. And then you overpin most of your targets most of the time too. And then the armor's not that great. And it is what it is. But anyway, that's the end of my little wrap up of each battleship line. I know I didn't get to talk about everything, but that is pretty much the gist of each battleship line. So as you go into 2021, you can kind of make up your own decisions about what you want to grind if you're new to World Warships or just looking for a battleship line to grind. Again, if you're new and if you had to get an answer from me, I would say the American battleship line is the place to start. But overall, each line has their own merits, and I do think Wargaming has done a good job of making each line unique, despite having, at this point, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines in the game if you count the USN line as a split, and again, multiple premium ships too for each line. It's pretty impressive what they've done here. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. We're going on our way now to 25,000 subs, just past 21,000 subs a couple of weeks ago, and I cannot thank you guys enough for that. Hope this video helped you guys make a decision on what you want to grind. Anyway, guys, hope you have a wonderful Monday. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.